In the recent chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen, we've been getting many revelations, information dumps, and lore drops when it comes to the strength of the various forms of Sukuna. After Sukuna has single-handedly decimated every single opponent in the series that's come to face him, and now recently outplaying Satoru Gojo in the body of Megumi, and then releasing his original form to completely decimate Hajime Kashimo in the Battle of the Strongest. So I guess it's safe to say that Sukuna is the strongest. I wonder though, which Sukuna is stronger? Sukuna with the utilization of Megumi's body and abilities, or the Prime Era Sukuna, the one that gives him multiple limbs for usage in battle? In this video, I'll be comparing the two forms of Sukuna, and then attempting to guess which one is truly superior. Of course, before we get into it, if you enjoy content such as this, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and with that, let's get into it. I'm sure that we're all aware that these two are essentially the same dude with slight differences, so I think it'd be better to focus on these differences rather than go over the characters themselves. Using these differences to compare and see which Sukuna is superior seems to be the best way to go about this. Starting off with Meguna, or the Megumi possessed Sukuna, since we have way more feats with him. We'll start off by using the first true noteworthy fight of Sukuna in this form, the one against Yorozu. Two things to take note of here. This Sukuna is only at 15 fingers, and this fight will primarily be used to demonstrate and communicate Sukuna's usage of the 10 shadows as the Megumi possessed Sukuna's one true advantage over the original Sukuna. It's the fact that he has this ability in the first place, and honestly, not much else. But despite that, it's a massive advantage regardless. When Sukuna arrives at this stage, it's to simply decimate Yorozu using Megumi's ability in order to speed up the process of his possession over Megumi. When the fight begins, Sukuna utilizes the Divine Dogs, and this 10 Shadows in particular seems to be an upgraded version of Megumi's. Sukuna is able to summon more than 2 Divine Dogs and then merge them into a massive one. He uses this to pressure Yorozu and to strike while he chases her, displaying only the beginning of the versatility of Sukuna's 10 Shadows. It's then said later on that Sukuna is able to not give the 10 Shadows a stable form in order to both expand its effective range and prevent the complete annihilation of a Shikigami. But when Sukuna does this, the Shikigami he summons cannot operate independently, compromising the offensive strength that they usually provide. Once Yorozu realizes that Sukuna will not use his cleave against her, she gets frustrated with him and decides to transform herself into her bug armor state. Sukuna responds by activating the Dharma Chakra on his head. This Dharma Chakra is the primary ability of the trump card of the 10 Shadows, Maharaga. What this Dharma Chakra does is allow a gradual adaptation to and eventual nullification of the effects of any attack that lands on the user. Although the adaptation of an ability begins and continues the moment the user is hit by said ability, the process of the adaptation can be sped up by more experience with the ability. In other words, taking more hits. When the wheel spins on top of the user's head, it indicates that the adaptation has been sped up, and once complete, Maharaga is able to change the nature of its cursed energy in order to nullify the ability that it's adapted to. The wheel can also be used for more than adaptation, in a form of pseudo-analysis as well. For example, Sukuna uses this wheel to perform an analysis on the ability of the Limitless used by none other than Satoru Gojo. Although he was able to adapt to it using Maharaga, he did not want to rely on Maharaga to finish off Gojo, as Maharaga was simply too weak to defeat somebody as strong as him. Instead, he used Maharaga to analyze the Limitless and to find a way that Ryomen Sukuna himself can bypass it and eventually defeat Gojo, to which he did. Maharaga again is the strongest and most versatile Shikigami of the 10 Shadows. It will be this Sukuna's greatest tool when matched up against the other Sukuna. As the fight against Yorozu continues, Sukuna swaps in and out of Shikigami, using the round ox that allows him to create distance between him and his opponent while doing enough damage to shatter Yorozu's bug armor, the round deer. This Shikigami healing Sukuna through reverse curse technique. This healing being on a high enough level to even neutralize the cursed energy that was flowing through Yorozu's metal. This being stated by Yorozu herself. Sukuna also has access to the Rabbit Escape, which as the name suggests, allows him to escape damage by summoning a multitude of rabbits, and the usage of Max Elephant. After propelling himself into the air, he drops it on top of Yorozu to completely crush her. and as strong as Yorozu is, this is impressive. And all of the 10 Shadow Shikigami that were used here were all used by a 15-finger Sukuna, so they likely have a much higher capacity for competence when speaking of Sukuna at 20 fingers. As Yorozu's almost defeated, she activates her domain expansion, and Sukuna simply responds by taking the wheel off of his head and summoning Maharaga. Upon Maharaga being both strong enough to take out Yorozu itself, and the adaptation process of her construction ability being complete, it demolishes the domain and slices her in half, ending the battle. Sukuna goes on to break down the weaknesses of Yorozu's technique and tell her that no matter what she did, he'd be able to adapt to it. Sukuna tends to fight this way, studying his opponents and completely crushing them once he's figured them out. For those who will say that Sukuna only fights this way to utilize the 10 Shadows technique to its maximum capacity, well, you're wrong, as Sukuna employs his same exact strategy against Maharaga when he was in Yuji's body, and only had his original techniques available for use. He studies how the Dharma Chakra works, understands it, and uses his techniques to quickly crush it. So this won't be a strategy exclusive to Meguna in the matchup. As we move on to Meguna's battle with Gojo, where he's at full strength, we'll talk very briefly of the domain part first. We're aware that both Sukunas have the same domain expansion, which is the Malevolent Shrine, this ability endlessly cutting all who are within it, so there's no need to speak about it until later. But something that this Sukuna has access to is the ability to utilize the Dharma Chakra and enter domain expansions with it, allowing him to adapt to the abilities much faster. It's certainly an extremely deadly option. In the second round of this fight with Gojo, the 10 Shadow Shikigami are used, but way more sparingly as he's fighting a much superior opponent to Yorozu, one who surprises Sukuna and catches him off guard way too many times for him to risk the Shikigami at his disposal, especially Maharaga. Gojo even states that he could one-shot Maharaga, which honestly, his one-sided beatdown of the Shikigami throughout the entire fight supports this statement. Something else to note here is that at the end of this battle, Sukuna states that his game plan for defeating Gojo in this instance included Maharaga as a necessity, as it would allow Sukuna to study the Limitless and find a solution to it much faster and with way more efficiency, meanwhile allowing himself to fight Gojo. It's essentially an extra brain for Sukuna, and for somebody who primarily relies on trickery and analysis, it's a major boost in fighting capacity. All of these factors combined may have resulted in Sukuna heavily babysitting Maharaga for the entire battle. Sukuna also uses Rapid Escape to maneuver him and Maharaga out the way of attacks. And then he's also able to call upon the abilities of the Shikigami, even when not fully manifested, as he does with Max Elephant's Water. The last Shikigami worth mentioning is the Merged Beast Agito. This Shikigami being a fusion of 4 Shikigami: Nue, Great Serpent, Morning Tiger, and the Round Deer. This results in a competent fighter with the ability to endlessly regenerate. The important details to point out about this Shikigami in particular is that it was easily able to eat and regenerate from a black flash from Gojo himself. It required a maximum output blue to completely defeat it, and lastly, it's not on the level of Maharaga, but maybe quite a bit below it. As Gojo himself states to it something along the lines of, "You don't belong on this stage," when he finally decides to eradicate it. Meguna is an amazingly competent fighter, as he is the king of curses with arguably the best tactical curse technique in the series. The versatility that the 10 Shadows provide, combined with the intelligence of Sukuna himself, he may just be unbeatable. We now come to the Heian era Forearm Sukuna, and as there's only been one chapter displaying the immense strength of this monster, it may just be enough. The moment the Sukuna made his appearance onto the battlefield, the eyes of another man who holds the title of the strongest instantly entered into an X-ray analysis, and the result of this said analysis was none other than perfection. Due to this monstrous form that Sukuna inhabits, he has multiple limbs and mouths. Using these deformities to utilize ritualistic enhancements in order to maximize the strength of his abilities, meanwhile not hindering a single one of his bodily functions. It was in this form alone, that Sukuna was able to single-handedly annihilate the elite celestial squad led by Uro, the 5 Void Generals, and repel the Abe clan's Desaichin squad, This squadron, including both Angel and remnants of the Sugiwara clan. We see somebody as strong as Kashimo get toyed with and manhandled by the Sukuna. Sukuna is able to utilize his multiple arms to parry and then hold Kashimo in place, striking him simultaneously, giving him a massive advantage against anybody in hand-to-hand combat. When Kashimo shoots a massive bolt of lightning towards Sukuna, he's able to casually shoot a massive dismantle right back at him, disintegrating Kashimo's attack and cutting him at the same time. This dismantle being enhanced with the never-ending chanting that Sukuna's extra mouth does when in battle. When Sukuna decides to end the battle, he speed blitzes Kashimo and launches dozens of dismantles simultaneously, being the size of buildings towards him, ending the battle with absolute ease. This Sukuna is none other than divine, having what is stated to be the greatest advantage as a sorcerer. This advantage allowing Sukuna to casually launch dismantles that can wipe out armies with the swipe of one of his many hands. We now understand that this Sukuna truly was the embodiment of overwhelming aggression, a calamity. When comparing these two Sukuna against one another and looking for the one that is truly superior in combat, I believe the answer is obvious. This answer being it depends on the opponent that they're facing. Although I believe that either form of Sukuna is superior to any opponent we've seen in the series as of chapter 238, when it comes down to it, one is more specialized for opponents with more complex abilities, and the other is built towards decimating opponents without complex abilities that require an analysis or a workaround. Although both are capable of doing both of these things, Meguna obviously is better for taking on opponents such as Gojo due to having access to the 10 shadows. This giving Sukuna the ability to have a much easier time studying and finding a solution to these complex abilities, and Prime Sukuna is likely better for anybody else, as he has access to his multiple limbs. These limbs allowing him to parry and attack at the same time, utilize enchantments while attacking, allowing him to completely skip the preparation of any attacks he may utilize and instantly attack and just easily overwhelm anybody in his way. This is Jujutsu Kaisen, where most battles depend completely on strategy, how the sorcerer wants to approach the battle, and how their techniques match up with their opponent. And with that said, if I were now to pit the two against each other in the place that Sukuna and Gojo fought, who would come out on top? And I personally believe that the fight would go in this fashion. First and foremost, the domain expansion does not matter, as they are equally refined. And in the case that Prime Sukuna does have a more refined domain due to his enhanced Jujutsu, he likely would not opt for it, as hitting Meguna with his domain expansion is not worth the risk of Meguna adapting to it. In terms of pure battle and curse technique, Heian era Sukuna would be able to overwhelm Meguna. As Sukuna tends to understand the technique he's facing before finishing the battle, he'd be able to understand the wheel fairly quickly, and absolutely push to overwhelm Meguna in a similar way that he pressured Maharaga. Prime Sukuna would likely launch multiple dismantles, similar to the ones that ended Kashimo towards Meguna. And Meguna could summon a Shikigami to assist him, but they'd certainly be annihilated, and even Rabbit escape, as these dismantles seem to cover enough ground to almost guarantee the annihilation of the rabbit with the sign on its head. The 10 shadows is more than likely only going to be used for the Dharma Chakra. As intelligent as both Sukunas are, with their world-cutting slashes, they could both opt to go for one-hit kills, but Prime Era Sukuna simply has a way bigger chance of deciding this battle in one blow due to his enhancements and the massive range that these enhancements allow his dismantle to cover. I simply cannot see anything that Meguna has answering that. All in all, if I had to choose which one would win in a battle, it'd be the Prime Sukuna. But if I had to choose which one is stronger, well, again, Jujutsu Kaisen is a very complex battle strategy series. And when comparing two characters this close to each other, it really comes down to what opponents they are more suited for. With that being said, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and of course, I will catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day, guys. Peace out.